Well, what's up again there, guys? Brian here at 3TR. Welcome to another solid episode of my weekly Q&A show, titled People's Questions, where I answer all the awesome questions that you guys have sent me over the past week. This time for episode 223, we got a pretty solid episode. I think it's going to be a little bit longer than last Friday's episode, and we also have the introduction of 3 newbies for the episode, so I'd like to welcome them to the channel. The first newbie comes from Mr. Mr. M Keller, interesting little sub-name in the middle, and you want to know, if I were a writer for a Spider-Girl television series, would I create my own main character or pick one that already exists? Well, Matthew, seeing as how I don't know much, or if anything at all, about Spider-Girl, I would probably have to go to the source material in order to help me out, so I can kind of get an idea of what this character is all about, what are her abilities. I mean, I'm sure they're pretty similar to Spider-Man's, but personality-wise, what makes her different from other members in the Spider-Man family, you could say. So yeah, I would definitely have to probably take a character that already exists. The next question comes from SettoA Scorpion, and you want to know, what is the closest I've ever come to beating the end? In a traditional sense, I've been able to hit him once or twice, but he always kind of comes back and tranks me, and then the fight starts all over. Funny thing about the end is, besides the part where you can actually kind of like cheat and use your PlayStation's time section, just speed it up a year and he'll die automatically. There's actually an earlier section. I actually discovered this many years ago after I'd beaten the game many times. If you actually see the cutscene where Volgan makes Sokolov piss his pants, that when you get the first like real shot of the end when he's in the wheelchair, there's actually like maybe 30 seconds where you can actually take like a quick shot at the end and kill him right there. And if you actually do that, he actually blows up in his like wheelchair, like kind of starts flying, and it can hit you in the face and cause you some damage. And so that like forest area, it just becomes like a sniper area where you have to fight off just a couple of random goons. So that's like a nice little tip. So I would say I've hit him once or twice, but I've always ended up losing. So I guess that's the closest I've ever come to actually beating the end fairly. But I always take him out before that period of time. The next question comes from Bentley, and you want to know, what game do I think Naughty Dog is going to make next? The Last of Us 2, a new Jak and Daxter, a new IP, or rumored new Crash Bandicoot? Well, I'm sure The Last of Us 2 is coming. I personally will not be playing it since, for those of you who've been watching my channel long enough, you know how I feel about The Last of Us. I really wouldn't care for a new Jak and Daxter. I've always felt that Ratchet and Clank was superior, so there's that. A new IP will be welcoming, but I think the most anticipated thing, especially after the new really cool Easter egg that Uncharted 4 had, is I would love to see a Crash, a new original Crash game for the PlayStation. I think it's just been too long since we've actually had a chance to play with Crash, so my guess is I would vote for Crash. The next question comes from the second newbie of the episode, going by Me Got Movies with a Z, and you want to know, what are my thoughts on the Uncharted movie? Well, I hope it got canned. I have never supported the idea of an Uncharted movie. I feel that the games are cinematic enough. I don't think you can tell a good Uncharted movie in less than 3 hours, because I just don't see the point. I really think that Hollywood should stop trying to take video games and put them into movies. There's a big difference between taking a comic book that has decades and decades of establishing. I mean, here's the difference between comic books, novels, and video games. With novels, if it doesn't have pictures, you have to use your imagination. And so it's really easy to take someone's imagination, or how a director or a filmmaker sees this book or this story, and bring it into live action. That's easy. With comic books, you actually have visual panels. So because they're not moving, you can simply take ideas. You can take concept art initially and just make it live action. With modern day video games, we actually have the power to actually tell these video games in cinematic ways, just like movies. I mean, the Metal Gear Solid series alone has so much cinematic quality. You can just watch the cutscenes and you're really watching a 3-hour movie. If anyone hasn't tried this already, I've done this many times. Just watch all the cutscenes to Metal Gear Solid 3. Literally, back to back. It's like a 3-hour movie. And you can just imagine a quick little 2 to 5 minute action scene when the bosses show up. And it really makes for a pretty compelling movie. It stays right to the point, the pacing is really good, and it still looks good to this day. So, I think they should just stop. From what we've heard so far with the early estimates, it doesn't look like Warcraft is going to do very well at the box office, and this is going to be another indication that there really is not much money to be made in the concept of turning video games into movies. Video games make enough money on their own. If anything, video games make more money than movies anyway. So why try to take this established franchise and put it in a media that we already know is going to be inferior? I don't think I've met anyone who has said that the movies are better than the games. I've never heard that on any video game franchise. Even the Resident Evil movies. I think as much as people hate Resident Evil 5 and 6, I think they would take that over the movies any day. I mean, I personally am a fan of 5 and 6, but I think just in general, it's just a crazy topic. So no, I really hope that the Uncharted movie cans. I really hope that this Last of Us movie that we really haven't had any updates on, hope that crashes. And as much as I kind of don't want to see it crash, but I kind of do, Assassin's Creed. I mean, Assassin's Creed could work as long as they don't try to do what other video game movies have done. Just create your own original storyline and just make it a coherent story. Because I'll say that the one advantage that the Assassin's Creed movie has is that we've gotten so crazy with the video games that even the fans can't understand what's going on. So maybe the movies can take advantage of that and just make a much more coherent and simple explaining story. That's the one thing I'll give the Assassin's Creed movie right from the get-go. If you can give me that, then I can enjoy it. Sorry I went on a little rant there. But the next question comes from K Carrot, and this I thought was really interesting for you to ask. If the original Star Wars trilogy was to be remade, who would I cast as Darth Vader? Number one, if Disney ever announced they were remaking the original trilogy, I think there'd be a riot and Disney would be burned to the ground. Because I think Star Wars fans can get crazy like that, because they really treasure their original trilogy. But in terms of casting, well, in terms of the physical body, just get some 7-foot guy to get in a Darth Vader suit. And, you know, we've had several voice actors do the voice for Darth Vader, besides James Earl Jones, that have done a great job. I mean, listen to the voice of the guy that does the voice of Vader in The Force Unleashed. And I thought he did a fine job. So yeah, there are plenty of voice actors who could do the voice of Vader. It wouldn't be James Earl Jones, but I think that, you know, you would get the concept pretty well. The next question comes from Goosh Monster, and you want to know, what did I think of Homefront: The Revolution? I actually returned that to Gamefly before I actually played it. I saw several reviews, saw several videos of just how broken this game was, and once I recognized that it was nothing like the original Homefront, which I own, and I can say I actually do enjoy playing that game, yeah, I just didn't even want to waste my time with that. The next question comes from Glenn Gouchart, and you want to know, who is my favorite X-Men? Probably Nightcrawler. I like his powers of teleportation, being able to teleport as far as you can see. I thought his action scene at the beginning of X2 is still one of the all-time greatest, like, opening scenes to any comic book movie. I like how he's different. He's, you know, not a humanoid, so he absolutely has to kind of accept that he, you know, can't really fit into a normal crowd, and people have to accept him. But yeah, I would say Nightcrawler is my favorite X-Men. And the last question comes from the last newbie of the episode, and who actually sent this question in another video instead of the people's questions last week. And your name is Maria Perez. Welcome to the show. And you had two questions, but I can only really answer one. You want my idea on a versus series matchup between a Hunter and a Licker from Resident Evil, and a Crimson Head and a Bloodshot, which I don't even know what that's from. But in terms of a Hunter and Licker, you really can't do a versus series, because it's almost impossible to determine how. I mean, it's easy. These things can be killed with conventional weapons. That's easy. But to compare them, you have to understand how they operate. What are their strengths? What are their weaknesses? How do they operate? How would they react to another thing? And I think that in a fight between a Licker and a Hunter, I think the Licker has the advantage simply because it has a much longer range, and it's much faster and much more maneuverable than a Hunter. A Hunter is just a giant, brute, kind of crawling reptile, while the Licker actually has the advantage of its long tongue that can actually incapacitate its enemies. And the fact that it attacks by attacking sound, the Hunter would be making tons of sound, so at no point could the Hunter take advantage of that. and simply due to the fact that the licker is a much more maneuverable opponent with much bigger claws, I might say, would give it the advantage. And I think the hunter might get 1 or 2 solid hits, but eventually it would go down by the licker's hands. Why these two things would be fighting, I have no idea, since as far as I know, I don't recall too many Resident Evil monsters ever attacking each other, just as far as I can remember. But yeah, I think that's how a fight between a licker and a hunter would play out. Well, with that, those are the questions for this episode, the People's Questions, episode 223. I'd like to thank all of you guys for making this episode possible with your awesome questions. If you guys have any more questions you'd like me to answer in next week's episode, be sure to type them in the comments down below, but make sure you get them into me before next Wednesday, before I start filming this, and make sure you leave it to only 1 question per person. And like always, I'd like to thank you guys for watching, and I will see you next time.